You could be the smartest person out there, but if you're not able to interact with people that you work with and motivate them and have genuine concern for them or their families and be able to help them through challenging times, whether it's work or not work, then we're not leaders. We're managers. There's a big difference between a manager who's just going to taskmask everything and somebody who's a leader.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have an author, a speaker, future podcaster here on the podcast. Jim is here. We're going to be talking about his journey as an author. He's got some great resources for you, a fabulous website you got to check out. Links in the show notes. And I'm just happy to have Jim on the podcast. I've been anticipating this conversation for a while, and I think you're going to love what Jim's bringing to our podcast and to our conversation today. Jim, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Happy to have you here.
Dave, I am excited to be here. You know, when we first spoke, I got so motivated about, I can't wait for this show to happen. And so we're now here, and I'm really glad to be here. I'm truthful. My one goal is that one or two people will leave a comment of what they got out of today's discussion. And in fact, if the first three people that put in a comment of what they took from today's conversation, I will send them a free autographed copy of my book. You just have to send to me their name and address.
Wow. Okay. Well, I want to tell you something right off the bat. In 550 episodes, none of my guests have ever said that before. Just so you know. So well done. Well done. Yes. No, really. 550 episodes, you're the first time someone's mentioned that.
I think if your audience is willing to listen to me, that I should be willing to give something back. And so I think it would be good for the show and for you and I to understand that they actually got something from today's discussion.
Beautiful. Jim, tell everybody, first of all, where you are in this big world of ours. Let's start there.
Okay. I am based in the Dallas, Texas area. I have spent my entire professional career in what I'll define as healthcare. I'm not a doctor. I am on the technology side of healthcare today, but I began my start on the insurance side of healthcare and then helping to build health plans, and then converted to the technology side of healthcare in the late 90s and have been there ever since.
Okay. Now, taking your wisdom and knowledge and all the things you've accumulated over your career, then to say, hey, you know, what's missing is a book. How about I become an author? On top of everything else, let's become an author. Who was gently prodding you and saying, Jim, listen, Jim, you need to put these things on paper. We need to share your book with the world. Who was it or what was it that kind of sparked you to go, I need to write a book?
So it wasn't any one person in particular. However, I have been mentoring people for 25 years. And I saw a common thread in the people that I mentored. They understood the businesses that they were in. They had business degrees or appropriate degrees, but they were lacking what someone called out to me. I would call it emotional psychology management, or lacking the ability to really understand how to manage a team or how to manage people or how to listen to people. And as I prepare for the next chapter in my life of giving back even more, I thought if I could go out and speak about what I think is important for a leader to have, that would gain and resonate with people. And then I thought, if I put it in a book form, it would help even more people. And so it was really that challenge. And I had never written a book before. And for your audience members who have written a book, they know how hard that is. And it is a lot of work, but it was actually enjoyable and rewarding to put it on paper and to have it start to resonate with people. And the first compliment I got was from a worker who said to me, as I read your book, I heard you saying every word that you wrote. And I didn't expect that, but I wanted people to know that it was really me and what I believe in. And that was my proof that it may not be a great book, but I nailed the fact that I didn't want it to sound like somebody else wrote it.
Okay. The big idea for the book and the pillars. I got to find out the source of the pillars. Was this a journey to establish these 6 pillars that you talk about in your book? Like, where did that part of the book come from?
So that's a great question. I'm a firm believer that people are not born leaders. Leaders are developed. Someone chooses to become a leader, they need to understand that it's potentially a life-changing but lifelong endeavor to evolve. The leader that I am today, I was not when I entered the work world in 1983 after graduating college. And when I look back on people I managed the first 3 to 5 years, I feel really bad that I owe them a public apology because I had no clue what I was doing. So if any of them are listening, I apologize. But I have come a long way in my 30 plus years. And so I have been also blessed by having some great mentors who taught me some very valuable things that ultimately evolved into the 6 pillars.
Okay. Talk about your ideal reader for the 6 pillars. Who did you have in mind when you sat down to write this?
I had people in mind that are either new to leadership, wanting to go into leadership, or people who are in a leadership position but think that they could do a better job. And when I say they think they could do a better job, when we talk about the pillars, we're talking about things like compassion and empathy, things that in 1983 I probably couldn't even define for anybody. Those are things that take time to develop. And so what I wanted to do was give people a book that was able to define an attribute, compassion, tell a real life story of compassion, relate that characteristic to someone in the professional work world today in North America who exemplifies that so that they could do further reading on that leader, and some exercises of how do you start to build compassion into your own vernacular. And that's what I achieved with the book. And I think that becomes something of, as I say in the title, a roadmap. You can easily pick up the book and slowly start. And you don't have to start at number 1. You could start at number 4, right? Pick whatever, and each chapter is laid out the same way, and go through that and say, okay, here's some few exercises I need to be able to institute that characteristic. And so it could almost be an educational book if I was going to be a professor at a college. Because, I recall when I was in college, the professors that I had all had their own book that they basically were teaching from. But that's not on my horizon. I don't have college teaching on my horizon, I don't think.
Well, speaking maybe coming up, there's some speaking opportunities. You're listening to this going, I like this Jim guy and I like the book. You would be available for somebody to reach out to and say, hey, Jim, I'm looking for somebody to come in and talk about the 6 pillars to my community. You'd be available for something like that, correct?
Absolutely. I do that now.
Yeah.
I've done it on a couple of college campuses. I can do it in the corporate world. I'm actually now working on a workshop that I could then bring to a corporation and say, hey, here's a 2-day workshop, hypothetically 2-day workshop. Here are the things that we're going to do, and here's the homework people are going to have, and here's the process I'm going to take them through. Whether it's 2 days or 4 days, I don't think it'll be 4 days. It's probably going to be a 2-day one, which would be enough that it's not overload in 2 days, and people would have time to think through things in exercises in small groups and talk about them and present them back to the class and things. So I actually started working on that the other day.
So as you're listening to this, and I know that you've already reached and grabbed a pen, or you're typing into your phone right now, contact Jim about a future event. Go to your website. We'll have a link in the show notes. It's right there. Reach out to Jim. I know he'd love to partner with you and reach into your community and build them up. So that as you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, this is who I need, go there. Jim would love to talk to you. Okay, so as we look at the 6 pillars, I know people ask you about the 6 pillars often, and the book is there as a resource. When I see a book like this, Jim, one of the things I think of is I see you on the cover, you got your suit jacket on your shoulder, you look so successful here that you've conquered all 6 of these pillars. You got this down, like you know this inside and out. And sometimes I think as a reader, we look at someone in your space as a speaker and as an author and go, well, it just seems like Jim has it all figured out. It's my challenge to you, Jim. Out of your 6 pillars, which one was the hardest for you to write about? Because it's deeply personal and something that you really have to work on as one of the 6 pillars. This is the one thing you struggle with the most. I want to bring humanity back to this book and people to realize that it looks like you got it all figured out, but there might be something that you personally really wrestle with. Which one is it?
So I'm going to tell you it's empathy.
Okay.
And I had trouble with empathy for a very, very long time until I was faced with a situation where I ran one of the departments I ran. And some of your listeners may remember old green screen technology, computers without a mouse. And I worked for a technology company that made claim systems for health insurance companies. And they had a green screen version, and we had already replaced at least one version, an upgrade to Windows, and we were working on a second generation of that when we decided we were going to sunset the green screen. I had 25 people in that department, anybody from engineers, software support, to account management people. And I needed to tell them that their job was going away over the next 3 years. But I had to figure out a way to tell them that so that they all didn't quit the next day. Because if they quit the next day, we'd have a problem. Because it takes 6 months to a year to convert somebody, the employees quit, they're going somewhere else. So are those customers because we just left them high and dry. So I struggled for a few days on what would I say to them, because I scheduled a meeting because leadership had said, we got to get this message out by X date. And I really struggled. And I came up, and my only goal was that I would keep as many people as physically possible. I was hoping for 90% through the entire duration, and that I would always have people to support the existing customers before the last customer terminated or converted. So I came up with 3 things. And these were from soul searching of what would I want somebody to tell me if they came to me to tell me I was losing my job, but it wasn't today, it was in X months. First commitment. I promise that I will give you as much time as feasibly possible based on my knowledge of when that customer is leaving or transitioning. That could be a minimum of 3 months or maybe even 9 because of the amount of time it takes to transition somebody. And so my thought process there was get rid of the stress, put it on me. I own telling you, Dave, that your job will go away in March of next year.
Right.
Now you have a timeline. My second commitment was if you wanted to learn the new technology we were building, I would make sure that we made available to you the smarter people in the room to teach you that technology so that when it came time to move, you could migrate within the company over to those organizations that were supporting that product line.
Right.
Commitment number 3. If you didn't want to convert to that product line, but wanted to stay with the company, I would personally help you find a job within the company.
Wow.
However, if you didn't want to stay with the company, I would make the same commitment to you and will help you find an appropriate job fitting for you on the outside of the organization. Now, my one goal was to keep 90% of the needed staff at any point in time. I can tell you with all sincerity that I kept 100% of the people through the last day.
Wow. Wow.
Now, that was what I wanted to achieve. I achieved a second thing that was totally unexpected. For that 3-year period, that team had the highest employee satisfaction rating in the entire 20,000 person organization.
Really?
The highest rating. When HR brought the internal scores to me, and I had multiple teams, and they said, we need to talk about this anomaly. And neither one of us expected it. But when you think about it in retrospect, we nailed it. We kept them motivated. We committed to them that we would help them. And we committed to them that they would have as big of a runway as possible to find a new job in or outside of the company. When I think back on that, if somebody told me that, I wouldn't have anything to worry about. So they remained focused at what they were doing, and they remained having fun at it. And at the end of the day, they told the organization how happy they were. I never expected that. Never expected that in a million years.
Wow. The commitment to your team in that moment. Because what I've seen, I've worked in retail corporate offices, I've worked in a lot of different settings. Sometimes it's a list of names on a spreadsheet, and it's a simple keep, remove, like there's the humanity's taken out of the conversation, just a number, just a name. And for sometimes, I know in some of my situations, the people that work in the office wouldn't even know who these people are. The company's so big, and in that it seems easy to just make a decision to remove a certain amount of your workforce, and it is what it is. And I love that your approach was to be empathetic, to understand these are human beings, and to pour into them. I think there would be a level of respect from them towards you that I think a lot of people don't anticipate in that kind of setting. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with that. It also, in today's world, is why I believe AI can never replace people. AI can't do that human thing of understanding feelings, thoughts, what worries people, because what worries you may be different than what worries me. And in fact, I wrote a post on AI a couple of weeks ago about the fact that if people are thinking that AI is going to replace the world, it's not. It may replace some aspects of roles, or it will enhance the roles through the use of it. But there's no way you can change that emotional element and that interhuman relationship that has to exist in order to succeed.
As you look at leadership today, from your lens and your perspective, what do you see as some gaps in effective leadership in the moment right now that captures your attention and you're like, A, my book's going to help in this, but I'm seeing some things in leadership today that we could really improve on. What stands out to you?
You know what stands out to me the most, and it's the number one pillar, and it's the pillar that I say is non-negotiable, because I think across the world, we're seeing an increase in lack of integrity. And that lack of integrity is going to do damage. You cannot build a high performing, trusted, and valued team if you lack integrity. That is the one thing that employees will notice in a new leader or an experienced leader. And if you're not going down, if I picture a roadway and there's a line in the road, and always on that center line with every decision that you make, and not trying to favor a buddy or take care of something different, you have to be consistent in your leadership and especially in your integrity. And I learned that in 1983. And I'll tell you this. So in 1983, which was the year I graduated college, so everybody get your calculators, figure out how old I am, right? I ran for city council in the small town I grew up in. I don't remember if we talked about this.
No.
But after the election, and I won, I also won re-election 3 years later, so it wasn't a fluke. The city manager called me and he asked me if I could come out and speak with him. I said, absolutely. So I went out and wasn't sure what the agenda was. I thought he was going to give me a list of things of, here's what your job is, here's how you're going to work with me, and here was nothing of the sort. We started talking and he said, look, I know you're probably wondering why I called you here. He said, I wanted to congratulate you personally. He said, I think you're going to be great. You're a smart individual. You use your head, and that's important. He said, but I'm going to ask you one favor. And he said, I want you every night when you put your head on the pillow to ask yourself one question. And I said, okay. He said, I want you to ask yourself, did I do anything today for my own personal benefit at the expense of another individual, group of individuals, team of individuals, or organization? If you can say no, you can rest easy and sleep well. If you say yes, you need to reevaluate that day and fix it. Do you know, since that day in November of 1983, I have asked myself that question every single night. Do you know I've never answered that question with a yes? Integrity is missing in a lot of areas in our world today. We've seen corporate mismanagement for years, going back to the 90s and Enron and different things.
Right.
It exists. And unfortunately, when I see a leader who lacks integrity, I see a leader who tries to hide their own inability by moving people in and out, or moving them from chair to chair. I call it like moving the chairs on the Titanic.
Right.
The Titanic is still going to sink. Moving the chairs is not going to change that. But what is going to change that is integrity, because if you can't regain the trust of your team, they don't give you 5 opportunities. You may have 2 opportunities, if that. But the moment people see you make a single decision with lack of integrity, their antennae go up and they start watching everything. And I can tell you that I have always led with and operate with integrity. And that's no different than the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella. He has done that since 2014. If you were to read a book about his leadership style, it starts with integrity. And there's other leaders around the world, and then even in North America, who lead the same way. And it's always the unfortunate thing that the minority sets the tone for how we feel about things. But I think we're being hit with more lack of integrity because of the people around us. I also think social media and the media itself has something to do with that. But I think that is something we have got to fix, or we're going to be in a bad spot.
I heard somebody talking about integrity, and they used this kind of example. They compared it to furniture, which is a little bit of a stretch, but they said that integrity simply mean to them in their talk that you're the same all the way through. So what you see on the outside is what's on the inside. And you compare it to like wood furniture made from wood, like actual wood, that's strong. And if you were to cut it down the middle, it's exactly the inside matches the outside. Compared to some of the cheap furniture that we would have back in college, and it would fall apart after a couple of years because it's just glue with a veneer. The veneer looks great, but if you look upside down, it's just a bunch of sawdust and glue. It's not actually wood. It has all the resemblance of looking like really quality furniture, but there's no depth. There's no integrity to it. It's not
There's
the
no
same
integrity.
all the way through, right? And I just love that picture that we as leaders should have the same integrity from what we show on the outside. The facade, the things that people see, should be the same thing in meetings, in one-on-ones, in interactions with our team. We should be the same person all the way through. Integrity leaves like crumbs. People can see that you're the same Jim that I see on stage, that I hear on your podcast in the future, that I see in your book. You're still the same Jim here with me right now. And I think that's the demonstration of integrity, is to be the same all the way through, to be your real you.
And for people to know they're going to get that. So if somebody has worked with me before and they know me, I get a lot of calls from people who want to transition to a new job, and I'm their first phone call. And I've had a number of them that happened to time it just right, that I had an opening and they've come back and worked for me again because they know what they're going to get. They know that, I'm also from the Northeast, so I tell it like it is. So I don't sugarcoat very much. So if I have something bad to say to you, Dave, I'm just going to tell you, and then we're going to deal with it, right? And we're going to deal with the fallout of it. But at the end of the day, it does me no good as a leader to not be upfront and to just sugarcoat it and then have you walk away thinking, oh, okay, so if I just make a couple of little changes here, I'm going to be just fine. Meanwhile, the message was, hey, Dave, you're failing miserably, but you weren't told it that way. We have a lot of leaders out there that, unfortunately, for whatever reason, are not that upfront. And then an employee, at the end of the day, you have a counseling meeting saying, all right, Dave, we tried, but, unfortunately, today's your last day. And you're like, well, what do you mean? We've been talking about this, but you've never said anything that my job was at risk, or I haven't been doing anything. I haven't been doing the right things. So I think we do a disservice to our employees and our teams by not making sure that we're upfront with them and they truly understand what you're viewing, so that you can collectively work on it. And sometimes the manager's viewing it wrong, and there's something else going on, and that's an opportunity to fix that as well. I have been wrong a lot in my career. I'm not afraid to make mistakes, and I'm not afraid to own up to those mistakes. So if I've misread a situation, I will own it. I absolutely will own it.
My wife works as a leader in a warehouse setting, and she was commenting to me recently something along the lines of, like, they have like a Monday morning huddle. Everybody gets together beginning of the shift. Some people are looking at their feet. Some people look a little disengaged. And she was just like, how do I connect with these people? And I'm like, well, just remember, they've had a whole weekend, and some people have shown up, their car is broken down, they've had bad news, their child's sick at home, they've had something really traumatic maybe happen this weekend. They're not really showing or telling it in the real time, but they're translating your speech as a leader in the moment to motivate them, get them ready for the week, through a filter of their lived experience in the moment. And you don't really know what's happening behind that face and that reaction. And you as the leader need to have a connection bridge between yourself and a person's reality of what they're living with right now outside of work, because they're bringing work and their life to work, right? So be compassionate, have empathy, understand. And that's why I love what you're writing about, Jim, because this is things that are directly relatable whether you have a team of 2 people that report to you or thousands, that people are responding and they're going to be standing in front of you or reading your emails, listening to you, getting direction from you, but they're filtering it through their lens of what's going on personally. And I think leadership just needs to recognize these are humans in front of me. These are people that are dealing with things. And we need to have a better approach on connection and just validating that these people really are maybe struggling right now outside of work. How can I be the effective leader for them in this moment as well?
I agree. And a leader who just sits behind their desk with the door closed will never see that. And now we may not be able as leaders to solve the problem,
Right.
but we have a huge responsibility from a mental health perspective and as well as a work perspective to protect that employee, especially if we're in a factory with machine things, right? We can't, somebody's not having a good day because their kid's sick. They're not going to be paying attention to the power saw if that's what they're operating, and that's not a good thing. And so we have to be attentive to that. And there are times that we may be able to say, look, I get what you're going through, and here's my thought of what I can give to you. I'm going to give you the rest of the day off. Don't punch out, but I want to give you the rest of the day off. You need time to go deal with this. I'm going to give you that time. I don't want anything in return. I'm just going to give you that time. And show them that you care enough to allow them the opportunity to go deal with something that they couldn't complete over the weekend in your example, or if it happens to be Wednesday.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think leaders have to do is they have to get out of their own comfort zone. I had somebody ask me, when does leadership start? And they said, does it start when you sit down at your desk and you turn on your computer? And I said, no, it starts when your feet hit the floor and you get out of bed in the morning. From the moment you get out of bed till the moment you go to sleep, whether you like it or not, you're potentially leading. Your phone could ring at any time. You could be at the grocery store and walk into an employee. You could be getting out of your car at the office parking lot and walking to the building. You have an opportunity, whether the people around you work for you or with you or not, to have positive interactions and potentially make their day better. And we as leaders have an obligation to do that. I once knew a leader who every day would park on the side of a building, go in a side entrance, and take the freight elevator to their office. To me, that's not a leader. That's somebody who doesn't want to interact with people. And that says a lot about their personality. I'll give you another example. When I worked for a company in 2008 to like 2015, there was this young lady, Kathy. Kathy was the janitor on the floor that we were on. And Kathy twice a day would empty out the trash, and Kathy twice a day would pick up the dirty dishes and either wash them or put them in the dishwasher for a group of 60 people or more that were on this floor. And I noticed one day that nobody talked to Kathy. Now, I knew her name. I talked to her every day. I always got a smile from her. So I said, I'm going to fix this. So I sent an email to all of the people that reported to me that were on that floor. And I said, the first person who can come to me and tell me the name of the woman who picks up after ourselves in the kitchen, I will give a $50 Starbucks gift card. I hit send and I walked outside my office door. Guess what I saw? 50 or 60 people getting out of their cubicles, running around like chickens, trying to find Kathy, and 2 people cornering her the thing I did wrong is I forgot to warn Kathy and I forgot to warn her manager, because I wanted to drive a message home that Kathy is part of this team. And you should be talking to Kathy as much as you're talking to me. She's a human. She's picking up after you, and she deserves better. Do you know from that day forward, Our own employees kept the kitchen cleaner because they now knew the person who was cleaning up after them. And whenever Kathy walked on the floor, she had a smile because more than 6 or 7 people were always going to say hello to her. They made her part of the community. But for however long prior to that, they didn't. It's an opportunity to include people in your world. And just because she took out the garbage and cleaned the sink does not give us the right to ignore her.
Right.
And anyway, so I literally did that experiment. And yes. And it was funny because like a few hours later, after it was over, the head of facilities came to me and said, I had one of my employees in my office and she was scared and a little upset. And I said, oh boy, I did it now. And I said, I'm very, very sorry, but I needed to set an example here of what I expect from people. I expect them to respect everybody here, including Kathy. And she said, no, I totally get it. And I think Kathy really appreciated people introducing themselves to her because they really haven't spoken to her.
Now, I want to bring up something in real time that you just did, and I want to reinforce it for somebody listening right now. At the beginning of our conversation, when we first started, what was your offer to the audience, Jim?
That if for the first 3 people that could make a comment of something that impacted them from this conversation, the first 3 people that posted that on your podcast page would get a copy of my book autographed.
What you did for Kathy and your team is almost a parallel to what you just did in this podcast. So it tells me, Jim, that you live a life of integrity because what you say is what you do and what you do is what you say. You did it on the show at the beginning of our conversation. And then later in our conversation, you brought up an example of a parallel thing you did with your team. Again, encouraging people. There's a reward there, which is great, but you're encouraging them to act on something. So not only the story of Kathy on its own is impressive, and I really love that as a great context to our conversation, but the fact that you demonstrated this at the beginning of our conversation, unrehearsed, unplanned, you are demonstrating one of your pillars in real time on the show. So I just want to call that out.
I guess you could say I walk the talk. Or I guess you could say I believe in it enough. But I truly, truly believe in it enough that, and I also believe that in many aspects, people may have 3 of the 6, 2 of the 6, but you know what? It serves as a reminder of how important they are and the difference that they can make. You could be the smartest person out there, but if you're not able to interact with people that you work with and motivate them and have genuine concern for them or their families and be able to help them through challenging times, whether it's work or not work, then we're not leaders. We're managers. There's a big difference between a manager who's just going to taskmask everything and somebody who's a leader.
I love it. Okay, so Jim, I want to wrap up with, we've been talking about your website. There's all these great links there. We can reach out to you and be in touch with you about the book, around speaking, about the future podcast, which I'm excited to know more about as well. I would love to send people to your website, but I do have a wrap-up question that I kind of want to do at the end. But first, before we do the wrap-up, talk about your website. What are people going to experience? Tell us more about your site.
So on my website, there's a few things. Number one, there's samples of podcasts that I've been on. You can also go to YouTube where I have a sampling of podcasts that I've been on. So you could hear me speak with other interviewers, etc. There's information about my book. There's information about my life in terms of how I got to where I am today, which components of that are also in the book. But there's also a contact form that you reach out to me. If you, I'm a true believer in mentorship. If you're a manager or want to be a leader, you need to have mentors that you can call upon to help you when you're faced with a dilemma you've not seen before. So I'm very big on that. And as I mentioned early in the show, I've been mentoring for 25 years. I enjoy that because I enjoy helping other people learn and develop. If you're in a position where you're leading people and don't have a mentor, please find one. It will help you immensely. Mentors don't bill you if they're friends of yours. I've never billed anybody for mentoring them. Mentoring and coaching are two different things. So mentoring is listening to a friend and helping them through a situation. And if you're having trouble finding a mentor, reach out to me. I may not be the perfect person to be a mentor for you, but I could help you figure out who in your network would be. And I'm willing to offer that to you as well. So there's a lot of things on my website, including links to get me, where I may be appearing, and just general news and information. And the soon-to-be wannabe podcast potential is listed there as a way to motivate me for a next step as well.
There you go. So, Jim, they've got people listening. They're leaders. They want to have an impact on their team this week. They're inspired by the book. They're inspired by your message. One action item we can do with our team this week to bring them together to help people see our empathy, our integrity. What can we do for our team this week that is a little unexpected? The Kathy example is great. What's something that we can do this week for our team to reinforce that commitment from us and to our team? What can we do?
I think there's two things you could do. I'm going to give you two things because we've already given one, the Kathy example.
Yes.
When you see someone you don't know, go up and introduce yourself and thank them for what they do. If you know what they do. If you don't, ask them what they do and start a conversation. If you're riding the elevator, how many times you get in an elevator and nobody says a thing? If you're in an elevator with me, that ain't happening. We're going to have an interaction because the last thing I hate is silence, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going up 20 floors, that's a lot of silence if it's an old elevator. If it's a brand new building, you may be there in a half a second. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want you to do is look around you and start to think about the influences that you're getting from others, work and non-work, and whether they lack integrity or enough information to lead you in a certain direction. Because I think from this conversation, you may start to see that a little bit differently. But I would encourage people to look at my website, look at the 6 pillars, and then say, okay, this week I'm going to look for people who, have focus or stability. The one we didn't talk about as well was humor. Humor is one of my pillars. I use humor to diffuse, 10 situations. But when I say humor, I don't expect people to tell jokes at the water cooler. It's really just to diffuse situations, get people refocused. And sometimes it's self-deprecating humor at stupid things that I do, which I do plenty of. But don't be afraid to use it. Don't be afraid to use it. So there's a few things that they can do.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for your time. I know you're a very busy person. To have time with us is amazing. I appreciate that. Everyone, the 6 pillars of effective leadership, a roadmap to success. Go check out Jim's website, grab a copy. And my request for all of you listening is when you buy Jim's book, leave a great review. Let people know why you love the book so that more people will find Jim's book and find it as a great resource. I am expecting you to have this on your desk next to your laptop at your business so that you can be learning and growing with Jim on your roadmap to success. Jim, thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Dave, thanks for having me here. I look forward to talking to you again, sir.
Excellent. Take care, Jim. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy, all I really care about is coffee, okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com and also in the show notes helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.